Commander Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of the End's Discovery watching the red planet grow larger on the main screen. She had spent 5 years studying the most dangerous creatures in known space, and this mission would be her greatest challenge. Yet, Cathara Prime was home to beasts that could tear apart starships with their bare claws, and she was going there. With only 12 people and basic weapons, the planet looked peaceful from orbit, with its red rocks and purple clouds drifting across empty deserts. Lisa knew better than to trust what she saw. Her team had studied the reports from the few scouts who had made it back alive. The creatures on this world were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. They were called voidhounds by the first explorers, who saw them, and the name stuck even though most of those explorers never returned home. Danny Brooks worked at the communications station behind her. He was young and eager to prove himself on his first deep space mission. Lisa had picked him herself because he was smart and stayed calm under pressure. She would need both qualities on this world. Next to him sat pilot Kevin Shaw, who had flown through more asteroid fields than any other human alive. If anyone could get them out of trouble fast, it would be Kevin. The science team included Dr. Susan Clark, who knew more about alien biology than anyone in human space. She had written the textbook that every xenobiologist studied, and she had volunteered for this mission, despite being offered safer assignments. Her assistant was a bright young woman named Beth Martin, who had graduated top of her class and dreamed of discovering new species. Lisa walked through the ship, checking on her other team members. Engineer Tony Rivera was making sure all the equipment worked properly. He had built most of their scanning devices himself and knew every wire and circuit in the ship. Medical Officer Dr. Jake Thompson was preparing the medical bay for whatever injuries they might face. He had treated everything from acid burns to psychic attacks, and nothing surprised him anymore. The security team consisted of 4 soldiers led by Sergeant Carl Davis. They carried the newest plasma rifles and wore armor that could stop most alien weapons. Lisa hoped they would not need to fight, but she knew better than to go to Cathara Prime without protection. The soldiers had trained for months learning about the creatures they might face and how to survive encounters with them. As they entered the atmosphere, Lisa felt the ship shake from the violent winds. The air was thick with dust and strange particles that made their sensors work poorly. Kevin fought to keep the ship steady as they searched for a safe landing spot. The ground below was covered with sharp rocks and deep cracks that could swallow their ship whole. They finally found a flat area near some caves, and Kevin brought them down safely. Lisa looked out at the alien landscape and felt excited despite the danger. This was why she had become an explorer, to see worlds that no human had ever studied properly. The red rocks stretched in all directions, broken only by the dark mouths of caves that disappeared into the planet's depths. The team spent their first day setting up base camp and running basic scans of the area. The caves seemed to go down forever, and their equipment could not penetrate very far into the darkness. Dr. Clark found strange crystal formations that pulsed with their own light. She took samples carefully, knowing that anything on this world could be dangerous. On the second day, they saw their first voidhound. It appeared at the edge of their camp like a living shadow made of crystal and darkness. The creature stood as tall as their shuttle, and its body was covered in sharp crystal spikes that caught the red sunlight. Its eyes glowed with an intelligence that made Lisa's skin crawl. She had studied the reports, but seeing one in person was completely different. The voidhound watched them for several minutes without moving. Lisa ordered her team to stay still and avoid making any sudden movements. The creature seemed to be studying them just as carefully as they were studying it. Finally, it turned and walked away, disappearing behind the rocks as quietly as it had appeared. That night, more voidhounds appeared around their camp. The creatures stayed just outside the range of their lights, but Lisa could see their crystal spikes glowing in the darkness. Danny tried to count them but gave up when he reached 20. The beasts surrounded the camp in a perfect circle and stayed there until dawn. On the third day, Dr. Clark made a discovery that changed everything. The crystal samples she had collected were not just rocks, but some kind of organic material that was alive. The crystals responded to heat and sound and seemed to communicate with each other. through vibrations too low for human ears to hear. She realized that the Voidhounds might be more than just animals. They might be intelligent beings with their own language and culture. Lisa decided they needed to learn more about the caves where the creatures seemed to live. She chose a small team to explore the nearest cave system while the others stayed at camp. Dr. Clark came with her along with Danny, Kevin, and 2 soldiers. They carried lights and communication equipment and enough supplies for one day underground. The caves were unlike anything they had seen before. The walls were covered in the same crystal formations they had found outside, but here they glowed brighter and pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like writing. Dr. Clark was fascinated and spent time studying each formation while the others kept watch. As they went deeper into the caves, they began to hear sounds that did not belong. Low growls echoed from the darkness ahead, and the crystals on the walls began to pulse faster. Lisa realized they were walking into something much bigger than they had expected. The caves were not empty, they were home to dozens of Voidhounds. And the team had wandered right into their territory. The attack came without warning. Voidhounds poured out of side passages that the team had not even seen. The creatures moved faster than anything that large should be able to move, and their crystal spikes could cut through their armor like paper. The soldiers opened fire, but their weapons barely scratched the creatures' crystal hides. Danny managed to send one last message before the communication equipment was destroyed. His voice was filled with terror as he spoke into his radio. The camp would know they were in trouble, but by then it would be too late. Lisa grabbed Dr. Clark and ran deeper into the caves, hoping to find another way out. Behind them she could hear the sounds of battle growing quieter as her team was overwhelmed. The last thing Lisa remembered was falling into a deep pit as the cave floor gave way beneath her feet. She hit the bottom hard and everything went black. When the rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they found only empty caves and scattered equipment. The official report listed all 12 team members as killed in action, and Lisa Kane became another name on the memorial wall for explorers who had died in the line of duty. Admiral Helen Stone was reading morning reports when the first message arrived. 2 years had passed since Lisa Kane and her team had died on Cathara Prime, and life in human space had returned to normal. The Outer Rim territories remained off limits, but there were plenty of other worlds to explore. Helen thought the worst dangers were behind them until Colonel Jake Martinez sent his emergency transmission from Fortress Beta-7. The message was short and desperate. Jake's voice shook as he described what had happened to his base. Creatures had attacked in the middle of the night, moving through their defenses like they were made of paper. The security cameras had recorded everything, but what they showed seemed impossible. Dozens of Voidhounds had worked together like a military unit, hitting specific targets in perfect coordination. Helen watched the footage with growing disbelief. The creatures moved with purpose and intelligence that no animal should possess. They destroyed the communication arrays, first cutting the base off from outside help. Then they methodically dismantled the weapon systems and breached the main building. The soldiers inside fought bravely, but their weapons were useless against the crystal hides of the attackers. What disturbed Helen most was how the creatures behaved after winning the battle. Instead of killing everyone, they seemed to be looking for something specific. The footage showed them accessing computer terminals and copying data files. Several Voidhounds carried away pieces of technology, while others herded the surviving soldiers into a safe area where they would not be harmed. Jake's report mentioned something else that made no sense. During the attack, he thought he saw a human figure in the distance directing the creatures. He admitted it might have been a hallucination caused by stress, but the description haunted Helen. The figure had moved with confidence and seemed to be giving orders that the Voidhounds followed without question. Within a week, 3 more bases reported similar attacks. Each time the pattern was the same. Voidhounds would appear without warning and strike with military precision. They disabled defenses first, then searched for specific information before withdrawing. The creatures seemed to know exactly what they wanted and where to find it. Captain Roy Fisher of the UNS Vigilance was assigned to investigate the attacks. Roy had spent 15 years studying alien behavior and was one of the few experts on Voidhound psychology. He studied each attack site, carefully looking for clues that might explain what was happening. Roy's analysis revealed disturbing patterns. Every target had some connection to human expansion efforts or xenobiological research. The creatures were not attacking randomly, they were hitting facilities that supported humanity's growth into new territories. The stolen data included star charts, colony plans, and detailed studies of alien wildlife. The attacks spread across multiple sectors, hitting targets that should have been impossible to coordinate. Research stations reported voidhounds appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. Military depots lost entire weapon shipments to creatures that somehow knew exactly where the most valuable equipment was stored. Even the Academy of Xenobiology, where Lisa Kane had once taught, was hit by a raid that stole years of research data. Dr. Amy Carter was working late at Research Station Omega when she received Roy's warning message. Amy had been Lisa's student years ago and now ran one of the most important xenobiology labs in human space. Her station held captured specimens of dozens of dangerous alien species, including 3 living voidhounds that had been taken during previous encounters. Roy's message was urgent. Intelligence suggested that Amy's station would be the next target. The creatures seemed particularly interested in facilities that held their own kind prisoner. Amy immediately ordered increased security and prepared her staff for evacuation, if necessary. She also made sure the voidhound specimens were sedated and secured in their strongest containment cells. The attack came 2 nights later, just as Roy had predicted. Amy was monitoring the security feeds when the first creatures appeared at the edge of the station's sensor range. There were more of them than had ever been seen together before, and they moved with the same coordinated precision that had been reported at other sites. Amy watched in fascination as the voidhounds split into teams and attacked different parts of the station simultaneously. One group disabled the power generators while another breached the communication array. A third team went straight for the containment area where their captured relatives were being held. The creatures seemed to know the station's layout better than most of the people who worked there. The station's defenses were more advanced than those at previous targets, but they proved just as useless. The voidhounds' crystal hides absorbed energy weapons, and their claws cut through reinforced doors like cardboard. Amy's security team fought desperately, but they were overwhelmed within minutes. As Amy evacuated her staff, she caught glimpses of something that made her question her sanity. A human figure moved among the voidhounds, giving what appeared to be orders. The person wore clothing that looked like it had been made from the same crystal material as the creature's bodies. Most disturbing of all, the figure moved with a confidence that suggested they belonged among the alien beasts. Roy arrived with a rescue fleet just as the attack was ending. The voidhounds had freed their imprisoned kin and stolen massive amounts of research data. They withdrew as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only destruction and confused survivors. Amy's description of the human figure matched reports from other attack sites, but Roy still found it hard to believe. The investigation that followed revealed more troubling facts. Analysis of the attack patterns showed intelligence and planning far beyond what any known animal species could achieve. The creatures had accessed secure computer systems using codes that should have been impossible for them to obtain. They had targeted specific files and equipment, while ignoring items that would have been valuable to simple raiders. Roy's report to Admiral Stone was grim. The attacks were not random acts of animal aggression, but part of a larger plan. Someone or something was coordinating the voidhounds and using them to gather intelligence about human activities. The pattern suggested preparation for something much bigger than simple raids. Stone assembled her best analysts to study the problem, but none of them could explain what was happening. The idea that voidhounds could be controlled by an outside intelligence was beyond current scientific understanding. Even more impossible was the suggestion that a human might be involved in directing the attacks. As reports continued to arrive from across human space, the situation became clear. The attacks were escalating and spreading to more sensitive targets. Military installations that had never been breached were falling to coordinated voidhound assaults. Research facilities were losing years of work to creatures that seemed to know exactly what information was most valuable. Roy spent weeks analyzing every piece of evidence, but the mystery only deepened. The human figure reported at attack sites remained unidentified despite enhanced computer analysis of security footage. The person seemed to know how to avoid cameras and appeared only as a shadow moving among the alien creatures. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A wounded soldier from one of the attacked bases remembered something important while recovering in the hospital. During the chaos of battle, he had heard the mysterious figure speaking, and the voice had sounded familiar. It was a woman's voice, and it reminded him of old training videos he had watched at the academy. Roy pulled the academy archives and found what he was looking for. Lisa Kane's voice matched the description perfectly, but Lisa Kane was dead. She had died 2 years ago on Cathara Prime along with her entire team. Her body had never been recovered, but that was common on dangerous worlds where alien scavengers left little evidence behind. The implications were staggering if they were true. Could Lisa Kane somehow be alive? Could she be the one directing the Voidhound attacks? Roy knew it was impossible, but the evidence kept pointing in the same direction. The attacks had started exactly 2 years after Kane's presumed death. The targets were all connected to her field of research. And now survivors were hearing her voice among the alien raiders. Stone read Roy's report with growing horror. If Lisa Kane was alive and working with the Voidhounds, then humanity faced a threat unlike anything in their history. A human with intimate knowledge of military procedures and alien behavior was bad enough. A human who could command the galaxies. Most dangerous predators was a nightmare that kept Stone awake at night thinking about what might be coming next. Dr. Amy Carter was alone in her laboratory when the alarm started screaming. Research Station Omega had been rebuilt after the first attack with better defenses and early warning systems. Amy thought they were prepared for anything, but she was wrong. The Voidhounds had returned, and this time they were not interested in a quick raid. Amy watched the security feeds as dozens of creatures surrounded the station. They moved with the same coordinated precision she had witnessed before, but something was different this time. The Voidhounds were not attacking immediately. Instead, they waited in perfect formation as if they were expecting something or someone to arrive. The blast doors sealed automatically as the creatures approached the main entrance. Amy activated the emergency protocols and sent distress signals to every nearby ship. The new defensive systems came online and targeted the Voidhounds with heavy plasma cannons. Amy expected to see the creatures scatter or take cover, but they simply stood there waiting. A new shape appeared among the Voidhounds, and Amy's breath caught in her throat. A human figure walked calmly through the pack of deadly creatures as if they were harmless pets. The person wore strange clothing that seemed to be made from the same crystal material as the creatures' bodies. Crystalline growths covered parts of their arms and neck, pulsing with the same eerie light that came from the Voidhounds themselves. The figure approached the main entrance, and Amy could see their face clearly for the first time. It was a woman with features that Amy recognized from old photographs and training videos. The face belonged to Lisa Kane, her former teacher and mentor. But Lisa Kane was supposed to be dead, and the person standing outside looked nothing like the scientist Amy remembered. Lisa's eyes held an otherworldly intelligence that seemed to pierce right through the reinforced windows. Strange markings covered her skin, and the crystal growths on her body pulsed in rhythm with the Voidhounds around her. She raised one hand, and the creatures stopped moving as if they were responding to her silent command. The plasma cannons fired automatically, but the energy beams passed harmlessly around Lisa without touching her. The Voidhounds did not even flinch as the powerful weapons discharged above their heads. Lisa walked to the sealed entrance and placed her hand against the heavy metal door. Amy watched in amazement as the door began to glow and then simply dissolved, leaving an opening large enough for the creatures to enter. Amy ran through the corridors, trying to reach the evacuation pods, but the Voidhounds were already inside the station. They moved through the hallways with purpose, ignoring most of the equipment and focusing on finding something specific. Amy realized they were looking for her when several creatures began following her scent trail. She ducked into a storage room and tried to contact the outside world, but all communications were being blocked. The Voidhounds had learned from their previous raids, and now they prevented any calls for help. Amy was trapped with nowhere to run and no way to escape the creatures that were hunting her through her own station. The door to the storage room opened without a sound, and Lisa Kane stepped inside. Up close, Amy could see the full extent of the changes that had occurred to her former teacher. The crystal growths were not just decorative, they seemed to be part of Lisa's body now. Her skin had taken on a faint luminescent quality, and her eyes glowed with the same inner light as the Voidhounds. Lisa spoke, and her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Amy's bones. She explained that the cave system on Cathara Prime had been much more than just shelter for her team. The caves were a nursery where young Voidhounds learned to hunt and communicate with their pack. When Lisa and her people had fallen into the deeper chambers, they had landed directly in the heart of an ancient community. The Alpha Voidhound that ruled the pack was older and more intelligent than any creature humanity had ever encountered. It possessed psychic abilities that allowed it to share thoughts and memories with other beings. When it found the human intruders dying from their injuries, it made a choice that would change the galaxy forever. Instead of letting them die, the Alpha offered Lisa and her surviving team members a chance to become something new. The bonding process was painful and dangerous, but it would allow them to survive in the hostile environment of Cathara Prime. More importantly, it would create a bridge between two species that had never been able to communicate before. Lisa accepted the offer, knowing that it would transform her in ways she could not imagine. The bonding process involves sharing consciousness with the Alpha and allowing Voidhound genetic material to merge with her human DNA. The crystal growths on her body were living organisms that connected her directly to the pack's collective intelligence. 3 other members of her team had survived the initial attack and undergone the same transformation. Dr. Greg Watson, her assistant, had bonded with a different type of creature called a star stinger. These were flying predators that could move through space without need for ships or life support. Engineer Maria Lopez had formed a connection with underground creatures called tunnel claws that could burrow through solid rock. Each bonded human gained abilities that their new partners possessed while retaining their human intelligence and creativity. Lisa found that she could communicate telepathically with any creature that shared the crystal symbiont. She could see through their senses and direct their actions with nothing more than focused thought. The bonding also gave Lisa access to memories and knowledge that stretched back thousands of years. She learned that the Voidhounds were not the mindless beasts that humans believed them to be. They were intelligent beings with their own culture and history. Their homeworlds had been destroyed by an expanding galactic empire that consumed resources without regard for the species that lived on them. Lisa discovered that humanity was following the same destructive path. Human expansion was destroying ecosystems and driving species to extinction across dozens of worlds. The Voidhounds had recognized the pattern and were preparing to defend themselves before it was too late. They had chosen Lisa and her team to serve as intermediaries who could speak for both species. Amy listened to this explanation with growing wonder and horror. The woman standing before her was no longer entirely human, but she was not entirely alien either. Lisa had become something new, a hybrid being that could bridge the gap between civilization and the wild forces of nature. Lisa explained that the raids on human facilities had been carefully planned intelligence-gathering operations. She needed to understand humanity's expansion plans and military capabilities before taking the next step. The stolen data had revealed the scope of human activities and confirmed her worst fears about the future. The creatures that followed Lisa were not mindless weapons, but fellow refugees from worlds that had been consumed by expanding empires. Each species had its own reasons for joining her cause and its own abilities to contribute to the fight. Together, they represented the combined survival instincts of dozens of species that refused to go quietly into extinction. Amy asked why Lisa had come to her specifically instead of trying to contact the human government through official channels. Lisa smiled sadly and explained that she had tried diplomatic solutions first. Her early attempts to communicate with human authorities had been dismissed as hoaxes or alien tricks. The officials who received her messages refused to believe that she was really Lisa Kane. The truth was that most humans would never accept what Lisa had become. The crystal growths and psychic abilities marked her as something alien and dangerous in their eyes. Even Amy, who had known her for years, was struggling to accept the transformation. Lisa needed allies who could see past the physical changes to the person she still was inside. Lisa offered Amy a choice that would determine the future of both species. Amy could join her cause and help broker a peaceful solution to the growing conflict. Together they could find a way for humans and creatures to coexist without destroying each other. The alternative was a war that would devastate the galaxy and leave both sides weakened beyond recovery. Amy looked into Lisa's glowing eyes and saw the intelligence and compassion that had made her such an inspiring teacher. The crystal growths and alien features could not hide the humanity that still existed within her transformed body. Lisa Kane was still fighting to protect life in all its forms. Even if that meant opposing her own species, the choice Amy made in that moment would echo across the galaxy. She could report Lisa's return to the authorities and watch as the military tried to destroy someone who had once been humanity's greatest explorer. Or she could trust in the wisdom of her former mentor and help build a bridge between two species that desperately needed to understand each other. Amy extended her hand toward Lisa, accepting the offer of alliance. The moment their skin touched, Amy felt a brief flash of alien consciousness touching her mind. She sensed the vast intelligence of the Voidhound Pack and the desperate hope of creatures facing extinction. In that instant, she understood that Lisa had not betrayed humanity but was trying to save it from repeating the mistakes of countless other species. Admiral Helen Stone stood on the bridge of the UNS Retribution, watching the largest fleet in human history prepare for battle. 300 warships stretched across space in perfect formation, ready to face an enemy unlike any they had fought before. Stone had spent months planning this operation, and she was determined to end the threat that Lisa Kane represented once and for all. The intelligence reports painted a grim picture of what humanity was facing. Kane had established a hidden base in the Titan Nebula, using the asteroid fields to hide her growing army of creatures. Reconnaissance drones had spotted dozens of different species working together under her command. The sight of natural enemies cooperating should have been impossible, but Kane had somehow united them against a common foe. Captain Roy Fisher commanded the scout ship Enzian Pathfinder and had been gathering intelligence on Kane's forces for weeks. His reports described creatures that defied every law of nature and physics. Space-dwelling organisms called starvoids that could grow larger than battleships. Serpentine beings that could phase through solid matter, making them immune to conventional weapons. Swarms of crystalline entities that fed on energy and could drain a starship's power in minutes. Stone read Roy's latest report with growing concern. Kane was not just commanding animals, but had created a unified force with its own tactical doctrines and communication systems. The creatures moved with military precision and showed understanding of human technology that should have been beyond their capabilities. Somehow, Kane had turned the galaxy's deadliest predators into a disciplined army. The battle plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. Stone would divide her fleet into 3 groups and attack Kane's base from different directions simultaneously. The idea was to overwhelm her defenses and capture or destroy Kane before she could organize an effective response. Stone hoped that removing Kane would cause the creature alliance to fall apart without its human leader. Roy had tried repeatedly to convince Stone that a diplomatic solution might be possible. His investigations had revealed that Kane's attacks had been carefully limited to avoid unnecessary casualties. The creatures could have killed thousands of people but had chosen to spare human lives while accomplishing their objectives. This suggested that Kane still retained some loyalty to her own species. Stone rejected Roy's arguments with growing frustration. Kane had betrayed everything she had sworn to protect when she joined the military. She had stolen classified information and used alien creatures to attack human installations. Whether she killed people or not was irrelevant. She had committed treason on a scale that threatened the security of human space. The fleet moved through hyperspace toward the Titan Nebula, with Stone monitoring every detail of their approach. The ships were equipped with the newest weapons and shields available. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon, and their combined strength should have been able to defeat any conventional enemy. But the creatures they were about to face were anything but conventional. Kane's base appeared on their sensors as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the nebula. The facility was built into a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and reinforced with both metal and organic materials. Strange growths covered the surface, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to serve as some kind of communication system. Stone gave the order to attack and watched as her fleet opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Plasma beams and missile volleys streaked across space toward the asteroid base. But instead of impacting the surface, the weapons were deflected by creatures that materialized out of the nebula around them. Starvoids the size of cruisers absorbed the energy weapons, while smaller creatures swarmed the missiles and detonated them harmlessly. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Kane's forces emerged from hiding places throughout the asteroid field, revealing the true scope of her army. Thousands of creatures moved in perfect coordination, turning space into a living battlefield where the laws of physics seemed to bend. To accommodate alien abilities, Voidhounds rode on the backs of Starvoids, using their crystal spikes to cut through ship hulls when the living vessels brought them close enough. Serpentine phase creatures slipped through shields and armor to attack ships from the inside. Swarms of energy feeders drained power from entire squadrons, leaving them helpless and drifting. Stone watched in horror as her carefully planned attack dissolved into chaos. The creatures fought with intelligence and purpose that exceeded her worst nightmares. They targeted specific systems on her ships, disabling weapons and engines while avoiding areas where crews might be killed. Even in the heat of battle, Kane's forces showed restraint that human armies rarely demonstrated. Roy tried once more to open communication channels and arrange a ceasefire, but Stone refused to listen. She ordered her fleet to press the attack despite mounting losses. Her ships were being disabled faster than they could respond, and the creatures seemed to anticipate every tactical move her commanders attempted. The turning point came when Kane herself appeared on the battlefield. Her flagship was a hybrid of organic and technological components that defied classification. The hull was formed from a living starvoid that had bonded with the remains of a human research vessel. The result was a ship that could repair itself in real time and adapt to any weapon used against it. Kane's vessel moved through the battle like a conductor directing an orchestra. Her telepathic connection to the creatures allowed her to coordinate thousands of different beings with precision that no human commander could match. The creatures responded to her will as if they shared a single mind, guided by human tactical knowledge and alien instincts. Stone ordered a direct assault on Kane's flagship, hoping to end the battle by eliminating its leader. A dozen of her best ships formed an attack formation and charged toward the hybrid vessel. But Kane was ready for them and demonstrated the true extent of her transformation. The space around Kane's ship filled with creatures that seemed to appear from nowhere. Voidhounds materialized on the hulls of the attacking vessels, while phase serpents slipped through their shields. Energy feeders drained power from weapons and engines, leaving the ships vulnerable to boarding parties of alien warriors. Captain Roy Fisher watched the battle from his position on the edge of the fleet and realized that humanity was not just losing but was completely outmatched. The creatures fought with a level of coordination and intelligence that human forces could never achieve. More importantly, they were showing mercy that his own species rarely demonstrated in combat. Roy made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He broke formation and flew his ship directly toward Kane's flagship, broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. Stone screamed orders for him to return to formation, but Roy ignored her commands. Someone had to try to end the slaughter before both sides suffered irreparable losses. Kane's hybrid ship allowed Roy's vessel to approach, and he found himself face to face with his former colleague for the first time since her presumed death. The woman who appeared on his communication screen was both familiar and alien. The crystal growths on her skin pulsed with inner light, and her eyes held depths of knowledge that seemed impossible for any human to possess. Roy begged Kane to call off the attack and negotiate a peaceful resolution to the conflict. He explained that Stone was too proud to surrender, but that many humans would be willing to listen to reasonable terms. The galaxy was large enough for both species to coexist, if they could find a way to trust each other. Kane listened to Roy's plea with sadness. In her alien eyes, she explained that she had hoped for a diplomatic solution, but that humanity's leaders had forced her hand by refusing to acknowledge the damage their expansion was causing. The creatures she commanded were fighting for their very survival, and they would not stop until their future was secure. The battle raged around them as Roy and Kane talked, but gradually the violence began to subside. The creatures had disabled most of Stone's fleet without destroying a single ship or killing more than a handful of humans. It was a demonstration of power that left no doubt about who controlled the battlefield. Stone's flagship was the last vessel still capable of fighting, and she refused Roy's desperate calls for surrender. Instead, she ordered her weapons officer to prepare their most powerful missiles for a final, desperate attack on Kane's position. Stone would rather die fighting than admit defeat to someone she considered a traitor. Kane sensed Stone's intention through her connection to the creatures monitoring the human fleet. With regret, she gave the order for her forces to disable the Retribution before it could launch its final attack. Voidhounds swarmed over the flagship's hull while phase serpents cut through its internal systems. Within minutes, the pride of the human fleet was as helpless as the rest of Stone's armada. The silence that followed was deafening after hours of intense combat. Hundreds of ships drifted powerless in space, surrounded by creatures that could have destroyed them all but had chosen mercy instead. Stone sat in her command chair, staring at screens that showed the complete defeat of everything she had believed in. Kane's voice echoed through every ship in the fleet as she offered terms that shocked everyone who heard them. Admiral Helen Stone sat in the conference room aboard Kane's hybrid flagship, trying to understand how her life had changed so completely in just a few hours. The walls around her pulsed with organic light, and she could feel the ship's living consciousness touching the edges of her mind. Everything about this place challenged her understanding of what was possible in the universe. Kane entered the room moving with a grace that seemed both human and alien. The crystal growths on her skin had dimmed to a soft glow, and her eyes held patience that Stone found unsettling. This was not the reunion Stone had imagined when she planned her attack. Instead of capturing a traitor, she found herself negotiating with someone who might be humanity's salvation. The terms Kane offered were more generous than Stone had any right to expect after losing so badly. Humanity would be allowed to keep all existing colonies and would not be forced to abandon any settled worlds. The only requirement was that future expansion would be limited to sustainable levels and would require approval from a joint council that included both human and creature representatives. Stone struggled to accept the idea that animals could participate in galactic governance, but Kane patiently explained the intelligence levels of her allies. Many of the creatures possessed cognitive abilities that exceeded human capacity in specific areas. The Voidhounds could process tactical information faster than any computer, while the Starvoids held genetic memory spanning thousands of years. Captain Roy Fisher joined the negotiations as an unofficial mediator between the two sides. His experience investigating Kane's attacks had given him insights that proved valuable in bridging the gap between human and creature perspectives. Roy helped translate concepts that had no equivalent in human language and found common ground where none seemed to exist. The most difficult part of the negotiation involved establishing trust between species that had been enemies just hours before. Stone demanded proof that the creatures would honor any agreement, while Kane insisted that humanity demonstrate its commitment to peaceful coexistence. Both sides had valid concerns about the other's intentions and motivations. Kane proposed a radical solution to the trust problem. She would establish joint research facilities where humans and creatures could work together on projects of mutual benefit. These installations would serve as testing grounds for cooperation and would prove that both species could contribute to shared goals without betraying their own interests. Dr. Amy Carter was chosen to oversee the first joint facility due to her experience with both human and creature psychology. Amy had spent weeks studying the creatures that Kane commanded and had developed communication protocols that allowed limited interaction between the species. Her research would form the foundation for the new alliance. The facility was built on a neutral world in the border region between human and creature territories. The construction itself became the first major cooperation project as human engineers worked alongside alien craftsmen to create something unprecedented. The building combined human technology with organic materials that could adapt and grow over time. Amy was amazed by the intelligence and creativity of her new colleagues. The creatures approached problems from angles that humans never considered, and often found solutions that were both elegant and efficient. Working with them challenged every assumption she had made about the nature of intelligence and consciousness. The research teams made breakthrough discoveries within months of beginning their collaboration. Human knowledge of technology combined with creature understanding of biological systems led to innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Medical treatments that had been impossible became routine, and energy systems that had been theoretical became practical reality. Captain Roy Fisher was given command of the first mixed crew vessel as a reward for his role in negotiating the peace. The IN's Harmony carried both human personnel and their creature partners on missions that explored the boundaries of the new alliance. Roy found that commanding such a diverse crew required skills that no military academy had ever taught. The crew of the Harmony included bonded pairs where humans and creatures shared consciousness to varying degrees. Some partnerships were limited to communication and basic cooperation, while others approached the deep integration that Kane had achieved with her Voidhound allies. Each relationship was unique and required careful management to prevent misunderstandings. Roy's first mission took the Harmony to worlds that had been damaged by previous conflicts or natural disasters. The mixed crew proved incredibly effective at disaster relief operations. Human organizational skills combined with creature physical abilities allowed them to accomplish tasks that would have been impossible for either species alone. Word of the Alliance's successes spread throughout human space despite efforts by some officials to suppress the information. Many humans were fascinated by stories of creatures that could heal wounds with their touch or repair machinery with their natural abilities. Others remained suspicious and feared that humanity was being manipulated by alien intelligence. Admiral Stone found herself in the unusual position of defending an agreement she had initially opposed. The benefits of cooperation were becoming obvious even to the most skeptical observers. Trade between human and creature territories was bringing prosperity to worlds that had struggled economically. Scientific advances were solving problems that had plagued both species for generations. Kane established herself as the first ambassador of the wild, a position created specifically to oversee the delicate balance between civilization and nature. Her office was located on a sanctuary world where endangered species from across the galaxy could recover and thrive. The planet became a symbol of what cooperation could achieve when different forms of life worked together. The sanctuary worlds were perhaps Kane's greatest achievement. These protected environments allowed species that had been driven to the edge of extinction to rebuild their populations. Human technology provided environmental controls while creature instincts guided the restoration of natural ecosystems. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Some humans underwent the bonding process that Kane had experienced, though few achieved the level of integration she had reached. These volunteers became bridges between their birth species and their adopted creature families. They served as translators, mediators, and examples of what evolution might become when consciousness chose its own. Dr. Amy Carter documented the bonding process and its effects on human physiology and psychology. Her research showed that the integration was not a loss of humanity, but an expansion of what it meant to be human. The bonded individuals retained their human memories and personalities. While gaining access to alien knowledge and abilities, the galaxy began to change as news of the alliance spread to other species. Worlds that had been isolated by fear of human expansion started opening diplomatic channels. Species that had been enemies for millennia began to reconsider their relationships. When they saw humans and creatures working together peacefully, not everyone accepted the new order willingly. Some human colonies declared independence rather than submit to creature oversight. These breakaway worlds became havens for those who rejected the alliance and dreamed of returning to the old ways of unlimited expansion and resource exploitation. Kane dealt with the rebels patiently but firmly. She offered them the same choice. She had given to Admiral Stone: join the alliance voluntarily or face the consequences of continued aggression. Most chose cooperation when they realized that resistance was futile. The few who persisted in hostile actions found their worlds quarantined until they reconsidered. Years passed and the alliance grew stronger with each success. Human children grew up learning alongside young creatures in schools that taught cooperation instead of competition. The old barriers between species began to seem artificial and unnecessary to generations that had never known anything else. Roy Fisher was promoted to admiral and given command of the Alliance's combined fleet. His ships patrolled the borders of known space, protecting both human and creature worlds from external threats. The fleet included vessels of every type, from traditional human designs to living ships that grew from creature symbiosis. Amy Carter established the Institute for Interspecies Studies, where researchers from dozens of worlds worked together to unlock the secrets of consciousness and evolution. Her students included humans, creatures, and hybrid beings that represented the future of galactic civilization. The Institute became a beacon of hope for peaceful coexistence. Admiral Stone retired from active duty but remained involved in alliance politics as an elder stateswoman who had witnessed the transformation of the galaxy. She often spoke to young officers about the importance of choosing cooperation over conflict. Her own journey from enemy to ally inspired others to question their assumptions about former adversaries. Kane herself remained largely in the background. As the alliance matured and no longer needed her direct intervention, she spent her time exploring uncharted regions of space where new species might be found and brought into the growing community of conscious beings. Her ship carried diplomats and scientists instead of weapons, and her presence had become a symbol of hope rather than fear.